that's the beauty of the season, is that wintertime brings us, by its kind of narrower circle and slower activity, into the presence of something that we might miss otherwise, especially in
Yes.
a very productivity-centered culture and environment. What we might have kind of missed as human beings in our construction of things, if we connect ourselves to the season brings us into a kind of way of living that is actually our own, that's easy for us to miss.
Hi, I'm John Cuddeback.
And I'm Sofia Cuddeback.
If you're wondering whether you can really be friends with your spouse
And raise children into responsible adults with whom you have a relationship.
and do what it takes to make a homestead, reconnecting with your body and the land wherever you live,
If you just want to think more about how to make a truly happy home in our trying times,
then The Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast, is for you. Join us. Welcome, everybody. It's always great to be together with you and us together here and with my wife, Sofia. Today's topic is winter, slowing down the pace of life. So, well, it's winter right now, and we thought that would be timely. We're actually in the middle of a very serious cold spell with a bit of snow here. Unusual how long this is lasting here in the Shenandoah Valley. But this connects to a lot of larger themes about how we live a human life, how we live in our households. Seasons are important.
I love your connecting the seasons to how we look at the pace of our life. Just let me draw you out a little bit on that. Something you had said to me before, I was like really blown away by that and thought that that would actually be a very useful way for me to think about how to structure this kind of what seems to be slightly quieter, more introspective.
Well, excellent. Then I have a quotation that you know of that I'd like to share, that you had originally put me on thinking more about this when you had listened to a podcast a few years back. Here, I think what you're asking me to share is just kind of a cool philosophical point that you and I have been talking about. A fundamental approach to life is always listening to nature, listening especially to human nature, listening to who and what we are. In many ways, our life should begin with a docility to the truth of reality, the truth of what it is to be human. So we've often talked about, for instance, there's a natural plan for life in the household. This is obviously a very important part of a broader plan for human life that is conveyed to us, at least in its principles, by what we are, written into nature. Well, this rich term, nature, I mean, the plan for our life is going to be written into human nature, but human nature is a part of, is integrally connected with broader kind of nature in the sense of those wonderful trees and
Natural
such that we
world.
look at outside the, and here's the thing, huge part of nature is seasons. So that there is a change of seasons says it's not just what's happening out there, it's what's happening in here. It's we live through seasons. We live in seasons. And I think a major feature of modern life, there's so many ways that we've moved away from the plan of God, the plan of nature, is that we're not attentive to seasons. There's many other ways too, but that's what I think we should look at right now.
It makes me so excited when you make that connection of living, the philosophical principle of living according to nature, human nature, that is interwoven and connected with nature, as in the natural world around us, and that the two share this kind of rhythmic unity. I guess part of the reason I find that so exciting, it sounds rather obvious,
Right.
which obviously a lot of these philosophical points have a tendency to sound rather obvious. But the thing that's exciting to me about it is I realize actually for myself, I feel like I live a little bit of a disconnect with the kind of interpenetration of the natural world and me and my human nature. And so it's kind of a reminder of there's actually an interconnection here and that there's a rhythm that we can connect to. I don't know why that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's just my experience of technology often kind of short circuits the observation of the rhythm in the natural world. And in most cases, we experience it as very convenient. It allows us to stay up later and keep working on things. It allows us to order things and have them on our front porch. So there are a lot of things about technology that actually really kind of make things convenient for us. But my experience is that it produces a kind of almost I don't know how to say it, like a restlessness or a dissatisfaction in me or an anxiety or a tiredness that when you talk about connecting to a rhythm of the natural world, which is connecting with our human nature, all of a sudden I go, oh, I think this might be the antidote to this feeling of kind of strewn out thinness
Yeah.
that comes from living according to just the convenience and expedition of the technologically possible
I think
world.
you've expressed very well something that, whether we know it or not, most of us are feeling that.
Mhm.
And so let's even just start by noticing experientially something that we might not focus on because we're so used to living in the world that we live in. But it's just, this is worth starting to reflect on. Think about how, before electric lights, which obviously was the vast majority of human history, the difference in length of day between winter and summer necessarily made a very big difference in how people
Mhm.
lived.
Mhm.
You're only going to burn so many candles, figuratively and literally. And so your days were much shorter. Your evening was longer. You went to bed earlier. And already just in saying that, is there something natural about that? These are always, it's a little bit tricky. It's not as though you say, well, it's having an electric light and thus staying up until 11 o'clock at night is this quote unnatural. Well, it's certainly not unnatural in some really strong sense of that's evil. But I mean, there is something in any case very different. And it's worth saying, you know, was that a net gain? We don't have to say that it's
Mhm.
necessarily in itself bad, but look at, for instance, this interesting fact. We look out the window. If we're attentive to the natural world around us, all of the animals obviously have a very different life in a different season. Some sleep almost the entire time. Others, the fish just kind of move to the bottom of the water and they just kind of hang out. You know,
Mhm.
Deer are moving around a lot less. Isn't it reasonable? Isn't it natural that there be a reflection of that in our human life? Human life
Mhm.
is always different, but deeply similar also to the rest of the natural world, even the trees. I mean, the astounding difference in the trees between the seasons. Doesn't that just point us, how should our life be different? And can we retune in now? Because of technology, we're going to have to be intentional about it. Earlier, in certain ways, your life had to be different.
Mhm.
Now in our hyper climate controlled interiors and, in all the technologies that allow us to keep doing generally all the same things we would have
Mhm.
done, we're going to have to say, wait, do we want to use those
Mhm.
technologies to make it be as though there's no difference?
Mhm. Well, I wonder, could I wonder, I hope this doesn't change the trajectory of the conversation too much. And if it is, let's go back to what we're talking about. But I'm wondering if you said two phrases. You said, is it a net gain? And then you said, should we be living differently? I'm wondering, I'm thinking, what if we actually didn't ask the question, is it a net gain or is it a loss? Let's just put that aside. And let's even put aside the we should be more like the animals and doing XYZ. What if we just said, what would it produce in us if we didn't have technology and went to bed with the sun, for example? So apart from the question of should or we ought to, because when you were talking about the sun going down and the day being shorter, I almost got this interior panic of like, okay, wait, that's just not possible. Like I literally, do you realize what that would mean? I would get nothing done in the winter if the day ended at 4:30 in the afternoon. And, it's kind of this feeling of no, 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 that's not even possible. So then I stop and I go, how would I be different interiorly? What would be my interior accommodation to the day being done at 4:30? And I just find that kind of an interesting question because it's looking inside of me and going, what are the attitudes that I have that would be in rebellion against what
Mhm,
would be living so closely with the
mhm,
rhythm of the
mhm, mm.
seasons? And I do feel there is something inside of me that rebels against that. And that's where I kind of go, what does it do to us if we live more according to the
Well,
seasons?
let's run
Is
with
that a
that.
good thing? Is
Let's
that a
well,
bad thing?
let's just follow the inspiration. I mean, think about that. And even if we just say 4:30,
Yeah, the days are getting longer.
I mean, if it's notably shorter.
And obviously, some
I mean,
places it's much shorter than
so
that.
you tell me. What from your experience, what is that challenging? what does that make you ask yourself? Well, how could I do that? What does that make us re-examine?
I think it makes me re-examine my notion of productivity as driving the way I am interiorly oriented.
I think that's very astute. I think you're right.
And there's something in me that feels like recoiling from a lower productivity or making me feel nervous or anxious about it. And, I say that, but at the same time, I think, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just embrace that during these winter days of the year, I expect myself to produce fewer things. Those around me expect me to produce fewer things, therefore leaving me a greater freedom in another area. It's not like you just go to bed and you sleep from 4:30 to, 8 o'clock in the morning. So
No,
obviously there
no.
would be times that you're not sleeping, but you're not able to produce the same amount. And I'm just picturing myself in that atmosphere. What would my interior disposition become like? And I almost
Hmm.
feel like it would require calming of my interior, which is exactly the antidote that I crave to what I experience as an unending busyness in my life.
All right, let's run with this. Let's think about this a little bit. I mean, clearly you've just raised a great philosophical issue, not some remote abstract one that's right there in our face about what it means to be human. And frankly, I think it's also, I can say from just my knowledge of the history of philosophy and certain ways of thinking that dominate more the modern world. This
Mhm.
notion of productivity is key. We don't have to get technical here. We obviously live in a world that much more emphasizes the productivity of human life. We tend to judge our days, but then expand that out. I mean, when we're going to bed, what did I get done today? That's a very, you can see how anyone in any time could think that. I think it is an especially very modern thought that is very much bred into us and encouraged because by and large society has has put less value on other aspects of human life that are utterly distinct from
Mhm.
productivity and sometimes indeed even they're somewhat opposed to productivity,
Mhm.
or to cultivate them requires your limiting productivity and kind of putting it in its place. But we don't have those other values, kind of who we are
Being,
over what we make.
yeah,
The
overproducing.
depth and richness of relationships versus productivity.
Mhm.
I mean, how many men judge themselves by how good are my friendships? What is my interior life like? What are my moral dispositions? How am I doing in cultivating? Am I succeeding in my life in cultivating moral dispositions? These are real questions. What are we prioritizing in life? So productivity obviously is a part of human life. I mean, let's put it this way. I think we talked about this before. I never tire of coming back to this one. So when St. Thomas Aquinas talks about human life, he says the thing that we most need to focus on is growing in character and growing in our relationships. Under that, of course, he includes your relationship with God. Producing the things that are needed for human life, which require a lot of work, are very important. But for him, they're 100% ordered to, subordinated to those richer things. And so productivity is in no way an end in itself. It's precisely about producing what you need in order to focus on the most important
Mhm.
things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just say a more sane culture would put productivity in its context, would subordinate it to more important things and not have it be more an end in itself. But we are having impressed upon us, you need to be more productive, you need to be more productive. Our life kind of gets a little out of hand, and so it just kind of starts to fit the mold of what's common today, and we feel that so thrust upon us. So is this now an opportunity to say, hey, if one of the big things of winter is precisely a call to slow down, to actually be less productive. Everything in the natural world is less productive in winter. Trees are in a slower mode. They don't need to be doing photosynthesis and making sugar. They're more work, just using some reserves, just like we humans, right? Traditionally, you put up what you need for the winter so that you don't have to worry about producing more of it right now. The change of weather makes it so that you can't be, as it were, the most important stuff like food. You can't be really growing it right now. Weather doesn't lend itself to most work. So we're going to switch and turn to these other things. But if we're all about productivity, we're going to use technologies to make those weather differences go away, and
So
we're
that
not
we
going
can keep
to
producing.
read off what nature's saying to us. Hey, this is the time of plenitude. Can I read that quotation
Sure.
from the? Because I think this is very much to the point. So this is, you will recall, this was from a few years back. You were listening to a podcast by Carolyn Leaf, who was interviewing Dallas Hartwig, who writes on these things. And here just is kind of uh, um, the bottom line of that, or one of the great points. We've gotten stuck in the summer mode, in chronic summer. In fall and winter, we should move into a new mode, a contractive and restorative mode, like coming home at the end of the day with a sense of settling, of slowing down, of peace, of belonging, of gratitude, and of generosity, being more vulnerable. I love this last clause, more present with fewer people who mean more to us.
Hmm.
So many
Mhm.
cool. This is a Dallas Hartwig saying, kind of looking the human view. What's the difference between kind of our summer mode and winter mode? You could talk about in trees, in a fox, and a bear, and a fish. The difference between their summer mode and their winter mode. What's the difference between the human summer mode and winter mode? And isn't it interesting? Because the summer mode, a feature of it is being more productive. So what have we done? We've used technology to kind of cut out those aspects of winter that tend to impose upon us a different mode. And so we lose that mode.
Mhm. Okay, a few things are coming together here. Let me see if I can string them together. When we talked about productivity becoming the measure of, instead of being how we are, so interior dispositions and relationships being the measure. It's funny, I immediately felt this kind of productivity is action, being is just doing nothing, just existing. But I think the key here, and I think maybe that's why we gravitate toward productivity, because we're human beings. Action is part of what it means to be human. Just sitting there and existing, while it sounds very elevated, it's just not what we're designed for. And so we shy away from just being. But the way you describe being, you said the center of being is interior dispositions and relationships. If that becomes the center, then everything we do, all the actions we do, have the meaning of being human. Productivity is just one of the actions, but being human is centered on the dispositions and the relationships. And so we can be fully active and doing, but it's going to now be in the right proportion because the center is actually the interior disposition and the relationships. It seems to me if we follow the seasons and the winter seasons are more contracted in the sense of our social circle, emotion, our work, our productivity is subjugated to something else, then it makes that time very rich from the human perspective. But it's also what makes the activity of the summer months actually be something that doesn't wear us out. I think the reality is
No,
the
that's
thing
right.
that we're all feeling the crush of in the winter months, doing. We're like, oh, technology has hamstrung things to make us be able to be equally as productive in the winter as in the summer. I think really what's at the heart of it is that if we get the balance wrong and the focus is on what we're doing, whether less or more, then it's going to ruin what we're doing, whether we're doing it according to the seasons or not. So you know what I mean?
Totally agree.
And so,
That's a great point.
so I feel like what you're saying just brought a greater clarity to me that the summer months, the activity of the summer months exhaust me also. And I think it's because I'm seeing the activity of the summer months in terms of productivity. Even though it's a more productive time, we still don't see it in terms of productivity.
Or only. I love your point. Can I try? I think I can help you say it. Let's try this. It's productivity is important. Productivity has its meaning. The problem is if we've narrowed things to productivity, we think productivity is the only kind of activity. And so going back
Yes,
earlier,
exactly.
where you said, well, we shy away from just being, we shy away from simple inactivity. Yes, that's true. But that's not that's a misconception. We have a
Yes.
misconception of what just being is.
Yes,
We think the only way of being is to be busy producing
something.
stuff.
Yes, exactly.
But there's a richer way of being that we kind of capture when we say the difference between kind of just being versus producing. I mean, producing is a kind of being also, but there's this we're inexperienced. I love in Plato's Republic when he says our problem is we're inexperienced in pleasure. This is just another way of saying we're inexperienced in the deeper richnesses of the richer forms of human life, the more interior, the ones that are more meditative, the ones that are more contemplative, the ones that are more resting in great richness. The term rest is a tricky one. The most important of human rest is a resting in doing very rich things. We're most at rest when we're most alive in doing very rich activity.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
it tends to be much more inward.
Yeah.
And it's activity that, as Aristotle would say, has its meaning in itself. It's not a producing.
Mm.
It's a kind of, it's a seeing, it's a being together. And so when you have all this great language of winter is calling us back to, frankly, the richer part of human life.
Yeah.
And you were saying, whether we're doing it now, it needs to be there in summer too.
Yes, even when the activity is different. And I guess that's the beauty, the gift of the season is that wintertime brings us by its kind of narrower circle and slower activity, if we're connected to the natural season, brings us into the presence of something that we might miss otherwise, especially in
Yes.
a very productivity centered culture and environment. And so I love that actually the season, what we might have kind of missed as human beings in our construction of things, if we connect ourselves to the season brings us into a kind of way of living that is actually our own, that's easy for us to miss.
Amen. So let's give some examples and think
Yeah.
about some things we can do here. Everybody will immediately relate to this. Think of how getting snowed in
Hmm.
children love. Picture this. My goodness, daddy's snowed in. He can't go to work. So lo and behold, he might actually go sledding with us.
Hmm.
We might just have a whole, the very term snow day for children in a home has this sense of plenitude and
Yeah.
wonderfulness.
Everyone's just going to be here
Whatever
together.
we're doing, we're not gonna say, all right, well, this is where we're gonna be really productive. We're just gonna more move into leisure versus work
Mm.
and be together. Consider what is lost where instead of canceling school, we have to go to school online.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, well now this is, again, you said earlier, there's a certain convenience to technology. But as Wendell Berry has pointed out, we tend to miss what it's taking away from us.
Right.
It's so easy to miss that this, because we have the internet and we can work from anywhere. Yay, we get to work from anywhere. But the problem is it tends to make us work
All
all
the
the time.
time.
So,
Yeah.
oh, no problem. I'll just
Yeah.
work from home today. Okay, go ahead, kids. You enjoy the sledding, but I'm going to work hard all day today, quote, remotely, right here from in my home.
Mm.
We've talked about how, doing a special course in Lens on work in the home, but work in the sense of work of the home, work of the things that we do together in the home to maintain and grow the home. That's different than, uh, you know, for instance, a man working remotely on the
At home.
computer in
Sure.
his home.
Yeah.
Anyone who does that can tell us from experience, he's got to be extremely careful not to then have it actually make his home life be worse by encroaching on all
Mm.
corners. Just we set that aside, but
Mhm.
go ahead.
So the description that you made of kids love a snow day because we're all present. What you're not saying during the winter months, we should not do any work but just sit around playing board games and drinking hot chocolate all the time in order to really be human. I think what the point that you're making, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying when we imagine to ourselves why children are excited about a snow day, it focuses our attention on the special thing that happens there. It's being more present to one another. And so I think what you're trying to say,
Mhm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, that during the winter months, if we're trying to actually express in our activities what the seasons are teaching us, is trying to be more present to one another in a particular kind of way. So work still has to happen. Work in the home, work outside of the home. There is a rhythm of life that needs to be observed, but maybe we invest that rhythm with the new intention to be a little bit more attentive and a little bit more present to those who are around us. And we can choose certain activities to do that. For example, we love reading. So we always keep going back to reading together. It's a great way of bringing the focus on
Hmm.
those, on being together with those with whom we are bodily. So meal times, a kind of more intentional, and gosh, cold winter weather is actually the perfect time to enjoy. Like, there's something about a hot bowl of soup or a warm meal that has this incredibly, in the coldness and darkness of winter, to share that together creates an opportunity or a moment in which there's a greater awareness or focusing on those who are given to us in this more intimate circle. So, reading together, meals together. And I think maybe just also if you are parents and you have children in the home, and but spouses can certainly do this even if you don't have children in the home, is practicing an awareness, that an interior disposition, I should say. I'm going to be more aware or attentive of this person or the persons who are put in my life. How can I create a little bit of space for me to dwell in my mind and heart on this person in a way that otherwise activity can sometimes get in the way?
Excellent. I completely agree. I love all of that. I have two quick thoughts. One is about being around the fire, and the other is about
Uh-huh.
if you have a household of one. And so, being around the fire, just want to give this image. We're blessed to have a situation where we have a living room with a fireplace. Not everybody has that. To the extent that you're capable of doing that, I still like to encourage people. I want to say this out loud, not to discourage those who live in a house where you're not, and you can obviously make do and do other things. But maybe you're looking for a new house, or maybe you're building a new house, and just bear in mind, there's something irreplaceable about having a fireplace. We like to have it be a wood fireplace, even if it's a gas fireplace, a place to gather. It just struck me as I was saying that the most special times of just being together as a family. The images that are immediately going to come to my mind in general are winter ones. It's where I think that's
Interesting.
part of the magic of Christmas. You're just together around the tree. You're
Mhm.
together around the fire. You're reading out loud. You're telling stories. You can do those things in summer. We should do those things in summer.
Mhm.
But there's something that winter is especially calling us to that. So just to look at our daily life, especially then at Sundays in winter, what are the ways that we're, just even the way in this the Dallas Hartwig, I'm coming home at the end of the day with a sense of settling, of slowing down, of peace, of belonging, of gratitude, of generosity, of being more vulnerable, more present with fewer people who mean more to us. It's not the time when you're going to have the big outdoor patio party with the whole neighborhood. You may be going to host a couple people and have them over.
And he's talking about interior dispositions and relationships. That whole list is
Exactly.
expressing interior dispositions and relationships.
That are expressed in what we're
Yeah.
doing in this
Yeah.
season.
Mhm.
We rational animals who have our
Mhm.
winter things. Household of one, people live in a household of one can struggle with loneliness. They might be thinking in certain ways, I tremble almost to say this, it's in some ways like winter all year, almost with that more negative sense of winter, of kind of isolated inside, no one else here. Yeah, that's a whole topic in itself. But no, hospitality was mentioned. All right, household of one. Hopefully, you have the things that you do outside in the summer, and you work out there. And there's less to do. You are a little bit more driven inside. Two quick thoughts: having a household of one in itself is a call to a deeper interior life. One of the challenges of being a household of a number of people is it's hard to find that time to
Mhm.
slow down and have the quiet time and have your interior life time, your meditation time. That in any case is a blessing. And of being in a household of one, lean into it. I'm going to more lean into how am I arranging my day to have that kind of really rich times. Um, and hospitality. Maybe it is a little bit more of a time to not have a big party, but that one person, that needy friend, that other lonely friend,
Or several
that
friends.
a family. Just there's something very special about a winter hospitality. Come in where it's warm, warm hearts. We're gonna have a warm time together. We can't particularly do much work at this point, but we're gonna just be together. So just a quick thought there, angle for those
Mhm.
in a household of one where there's a certain sadness. You can't gather around the fire with your household, but there's a certain cross there in being a household of one. But there's that gift of leaning into that time that you do have to be really deepening that interior life and that quiet time, and maybe a special charism of hospitality.
I love that. It's making me excited to go and sit by the fire.
Any other practical things we wanna think about or share or mull over before we wrap up? And if we're going to get in this zone, what practical steps might we make? Maybe we can just try to kind of sum up what we're thinking here.
Well, this is a little bit breaking the rules because it feels like it's not a very practical step, but I think it's an essential one, especially if you are not a household of one and you have a spouse or you have a spouse and children at home. I think it's incredibly important for us to be aware that we are pursuing a smaller, quieter circle in time. And that if we have that attitude, then the things that we choose to do, the way we choose to communicate with those who are in our household circle actually changes. And I think we set a tone for the household by what our interior disposition is. So if we have an interior disposition of the smaller circle of gratitude, of warmth, of hospitality, of closeness and attentiveness, that's the tone that you set for the household that then the children enter into. And then there are certain things that you say, no, we're not going to go do that. It's great when it's as cold as it is right now. You say, I'm sorry, sweetheart, it is way too cold to go out and do that right now. So that helps.
Hmm.
But we can make if we cultivate an interior disposition in ourselves, of course, if you're spouses, you do that together to create an environment for your children where everyone's expectations of activity are different.
Right,
And that comes from an interior spirit of we do fewer things in the winter,
right,
or I'm doing
right,
less even
right,
here in the home.
right. I love that. One of the words from Dallas Hartwork there was vulnerability,
Mm.
which very much has to do with kind of openness of heart in relationship. I really don't think this is in any way stretching it or corny. It's a little bit, life is always about relationship. But there's something about winter that I really do believe is a special call to remind us of the more important things. It's not that summer's somehow about unimportant things, but that we kind of have to come in, be with the fewer people that are closer
Mhm.
to us, and not so much focus on the productivity. When we have to be productive, we're going to be productive. And of course, there's a lot that we still need to get done. But can we even ask the question in the name of relationship, in the name of the things that are so important, especially for parents with children, young children, any children, older children, the things that we need to be doing to be attentive and to cultivate those relationships? We must not let productivity get in the way. It's so easy to just kind of lean into, well, got to get that done, got to get that done.
Mhm.
How? Because I know I have to. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't have to get that
Yeah.
done. To really be honest,
Yeah. Maybe
what
it's a
do
subtle way
we?
of protecting us from vulnerability.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
What do we really have to get done
Hmm.
here or not?
And we have to be willing to be vulnerable.
And I just want to end with a snow day. I will say now without crying, but those who have younger children, don't miss the snow day. Don't miss the opportunity of when they're still there. Daddy, you want to go out and sled? It's only a certain number of years in your life you're ever going to hear that said. And if you no, got a such and such, and I'm just giving that as an image, whatever form that takes place. Let's not miss the astounding snow day gifts in our winters.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, dear. Great to be with you all. Enjoyed having this conversation together.
Thanks for tuning in this episode of The Intentional Household. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. If you have any topic requests, please send them to lifecraftgroup@gmail.com. For our Wednesday reflections, free courses, reading groups, and live events, please visit life-craft.org.